Yeah, welcome back, guys. Uh, I'm Mahesh, and today I'll continue the next session on the BDD. So, I would like you to explain you what exactly we saw yesterday. So, we saw the automation testing approach. We saw the automation testing approach that is change from record and play to then code test execution to then open source automation to the test driven development to the behavioral driven development. Okay, so in the record and play we do have the application which can simply record and play application, so that will have the code base. Now if we can talk about the code test execution, then we do have the QTP, RFT and other different tools which can help you in the data driven approach like keyword driven approach or the hybrid approach. Now, the third one is your open source automation. In the open source automation, we do have Selenium is the best example of open source automation, where they focused on the tester, developer, and where you can have the multiple design patterns plus multiple different frameworks to be used. Same way, then the next approach that comes is test driven development. And in the test driven development, we have the development application where we can write automated test, then it fails, then they execute. That means then it fails, then again they can write their development code, then they executed that automated code, and then they refactor the test based on the failures. That is what the test driven development approach says. And later on, then the last approach which we have discussed yesterday, that is nothing but your behavioral driven development. On the behavioral driven development, the next that comes is tester, developer, the test manager, scrum master, product owner, or the stakeholders, they can work on this. Okay, so now in behavioral driven development, we saw we are going to work on the Cucumber framework. Now in the Cucumber framework, we do require some of the different libraries. So these are those libraries which are required on the Cucumber. So for Cucumber to BDD work, we can download these libraries from the different source code like your Maven. You can go to the search.maven.org. You can add or search any type of library here and simply click on search, so that you can get that particular library. You can just download it. Okay, and same way, if I can go back here, so I mentioned the behavioral driven development approach. So in behavioral driven development, there are two different or major roles. So like your non-technical user role and your technical user role. So in the non-technical user role, they have some of the features or some of the tasks that they performed. Now, when we say they perform some of the tasks, like they use the BDD and they come up with their own scenarios or their tests. So they can walk through with the test, they can walk through with the use cases, and they just provide those use cases and the test cases to you. Then they can create the business components and define the flow. That means they just mention you these are the scenarios and these are how the flow that should happen. Same way they can run the test cases in the different environments or platform, even though they're not aware about all the technicality behind those execution. And the technical or the project manager or someone, they can simply accessing the graphical report and they can just provide those graphical report for the further references. Same way for the technical user, they can create the test data by using different data sources. They can debug or maintain the objects, or we can say the web elements and the test cases or your test data. They can inject some of the scripts. That means they can write the new automated scripts, or they can expand the automated scripts library, and they can capture the unique objects or and associated with the related test scripts. This is how they can work on the technical user. They can work. Now, what we saw that we can download this all the libraries. Same way, to work with Cucumber, we required the Selenium library also. So we can go to this side, that Selenium dev.downloads, we can select any of the Java bindings, like any of the language bindings. Like we selected the Java bindings, we simply download all the jar files or the library from here, and we can again keep it at one location. Now once we can download all those libraries and everything, I can go back here and I can show you what we did yesterday. So we simply add those libraries as a reference libraries over here. So if you can see, I have added all the Selenium libraries. I have added all the Cucumber libraries for our reference for our future development. Okay, and then what we start, so we create a new project in Java, and then we added those reference libraries to that project, and then we added a new we can say the new folder name as features, where we are going to maintain lot of feature file for our future references, and every feature can hold a multiple scenarios. So every feature can hold a multiple scenario that is maintained in this feature file. So we just create yesterday one sample feature file. If you can see in the sample feature file, we do have all these tags and all this template where you can identify what is scenario, what is then, what is when, what is given, and all other areas. So now these are your tags. Okay, so these are your tags. So we have added this feature tag as a feature. Same way we can add this scenario as a scenario tag. Now if you wanted to see we just explain this feature in more detail here. We just explain this feature in more detail here, and we just explain scenario description over here. Now about the scenario, we discussed yesterday, like BDD that works on the plain English language or a Gherkin language. So that Gherkin language says it is nothing but a GWT, that is a given, when, and then. So when we say given, when, and then, given is a precondition, when is an action, and then is your expected results. So this is how we can see the GWT concept work. Okay, now BDD, they have the two different areas like feature and the definition file. If you can see the feature file allows you to write all your scenarios in the plain English language like the Gherkin language. Same way, if you can see the definition file, which allows you to add all your technical implementation for the particular feature file. Now I'm going back here, and what I did, I just right click on this feature file and I simply added one dot feature file here. In this dot feature file, I have start explaining our scenario. So if you can see, this is the scenario. This is not required, so I'm just going to delete this. We'll see that in future. So now my scenario is I wanted to log in. Wanted to log in into application. Now when I wanted to log in into application, I have some of the precondition. That is, I have the valid username. I should have valid username, and I should have the application URL. And then we can write. Then I open URL in browser. That is also one of the step, for example. And then we said when I enter username, when I enter password, and I click on sign in button, then I should see a home page, and also I should see the home page as a title. Okay, so this is what my scenario. Now to execute this scenario, I cannot directly use this sample feature, and I cannot directly use this or execute this sample feature. Okay, so there are something that we require to execute. So what we required is the Cucumber test runner class. What we require is the Cucumber test runner class. So in very simple terms, when we talked about the Cucumber test runner class, it is one of the many mechanisms using which you can run your Cucumber feature file. It has the mechanism by which you can run your Cucumber feature file. Now the test runner class that we'll use in today's session is a JUnit runner class. Okay, I'm going to show you using the JUnit runner class. Now there are some of its features, like in addition to running a Cucumber feature file, the test runner class also act as an interlink between feature files and the step definition classes. It is in test runner class so that you can provide the path for both your feature file as well as your definition file. Now there are multiple types of test runners, like such as your JUnit runner. Then we do have another like CLI runner. For the Android we have Android runner and so on. Okay, but that we can use to run a Cucumber feature file. So these are the different runner class. Currently we are going to use a JUnit runner class. So where we can work mostly on the JUnit, and in future I can add some other runner class also. Now with the test runner class, you have the option to run either a single feature file or the group of feature file, or we can say the multiple feature file. Now I will focus mostly to running a single feature file. Now I said we need a Cucumber, a test runner class. So I can go back here in my SRC, I can right click and I can create a new package. On the SRC, I am going to create an SRC package. So I say test execution runner. Okay, I say test execution runner package, for example. I created test execution runner package. Now what it says, you need a, a class, a execution class. So I right click on that package. I go back here and I'm going to add our execution, or we can say test execution runner. Okay, test execution runner class, for example, and I said finish. So I have added a test execution runner class here. Now I do have the feature file which I wanted to run. For to run this, you need a JUnit runner class. For the JUnit runner class, I have added a text execution runner class. Now what I can do, I can simply write here @ Now what is this @? Most of the time we are confused in what is @. Now @ is nothing but a annotation, and annotation have been a very important part of Java, and it's been there from the time like your J2 SE of 5.0. Now all of us have seen annotation like override, override, deprecated in our application code or somewhere in your automation code. Now, one word to explain annotation is it is a metadata. Now, metadata is a data about about the data, for example. Okay, so annotation are metadata for code. Now, prior to the annotation, the XML was extensively used for metadata, and somehow a particular set of application developers and the architects they thought XML maintenance was getting troublesome. So they wanted something that could be coupled closely with the code instead of XML. That's what the architect and the developers they thought. So which is very loosely coupled. Okay. So in some cases almost separate from their code. So in our other way, like XML versus annotation. Okay. So we will find a lot of interesting debates, but an interesting point is that XML configuration were introduced to separate configuration from code, and the last two statement might create a bit of doubt in your mind that these two are creating a cycle, but both have their own pros and cons. Okay, so if I can say, like, annotations are only metadata and it do not contain any business logic. I understood it is very difficult to digest, but true, it is not contain any business logic. If annotation do not contain the logic, then someone else must be doing something, and that someone is the consumer of this annotation metadata. Like, when I say consumer of this annotation metadata, like, I mean it has the implementation of or the business logic. Like, annotation only provide information about the attribute, okay, on which it is defined. So the consumer is a piece of code that reads this information and then performs the necessary logic. So when we are talking about the standard annotation like at the rate override, like we use to override any of the method in the Java. So JVM is the consumer and it works at the bytecode level. Now that's what something developers can't control and can't use the custom annotation. So we need to write a consumers for our annotation by ourselves. Okay, and these days, if you can think, the most of the framework use the combination of both XML and annotation to leverage positive aspects of both. Okay, so now when I say annotation, the JUnit runner class required the annotation like run with. So if you can see, I say control space, I'll not getting anything here, no intelligence about the run with. At the rate run with, that at the rate is your annotation and run with is your plain metadata. I cannot get anything. So why we are not getting? Because we are using the JUnit test runner. So we need to add first JUnit to our project. So I can right click, I can go back to the build path, configure build path. I can say add library. Before this we have added the external jars. Now we need to add a library. To add the library, most of the time JUnit is already installed in your Eclipse most of the time. So what I did, I simply take the JUnit from here. I said next and I said finished. I said apply and I said okay. So if you can see, the JUnit is added within my project. If you can see, the JUnit is added within my project. Now that added within your project, so we need to do the execution. To perform that execution, what we simply do, we simply now wanted to see control space, and if you can see, it will use that JUnit runner and run with. So this is the package and this is that particular class or the interface that comes always. Okay, so this is what it's an using for your metadata now. Okay, now I said run with, so still I am getting error. Why? So first of all, we wanted to understand what is this run with annotation is. So this is a JUnit annotation and that specifies which runner it has to use to execute this class. I repeat one more time. This is just a JUnit annotation and that specifies which runner it has to use to execute this particular class. They are waiting for you need to add some runner here. Okay, and now if you can see here, I am going to provide I am going to provide a runner. The runner is a cucumber class, and cucumber class is just a parameter with this annotation. Now with this, JUnit will know that it has to execute this test case as a cucumber test. So cucumber, so this run with now aware this class as a test case should be run as a cucumber test because you are added the parameter as a cucumber class. Okay, now we added one annotation. Now let's enter and add another, that is your cucumber options. So if you can see, I have added another annotation that is a cucumber options. Now next question comes, what is this cucumber options annotation? Now this annotation provides some important information which will be used to run your cucumber feature file. Because why we are added this test runner class? We have added this test runner class to execute this feature file. We added this test runner class to execute this feature file. Now what cucumber option says, and it provides some important information which will be used to run your this feature file. Now at very least, Java should know the location of the feature file. Okay, and Also, it is aware of the location of your step definition class also. So that's why Cucumber annotations will be just will do all these execution. So we can say it is nothing but a property file for your test, or we can say it is nothing but to perform some of the settings to your this test. Now it contains some of the properties very important, like we'll take that one by one, no, not an issue, but let me show you. Now I can go back and I can say this is my Cucumber options. Now it has the properties like a features first. So I said Cucumber option will help you to run your features file. Cucumber option will help you to run your features file. So to run your features file, you need to give the path of the folder. So what I'm going to give? So I am giving the path of the folder, that is my features. If you can see here, I am giving the path of this folder as a features. I am simply saving this. No need to do any other changes, and I am just going to execute this class now. So right click, run as, and a JUnit test. So once I execute, you can see I have executed all the 8 or 9 steps from this sample feature file, and these are the output. If I go back to this output, what it says, you executed 1 scenarios, you executed 8 steps, but there are missing steps with these snippets below. These are all the steps, those are still missing. So what are those steps? If you can see, it has given I have the valid username and password, I have application URL, I wanted to open the URL in browser. So these steps are missing their implementation. So what I'll do, I need to do this implementation somewhere. I need to do this implementation somewhere. So once we said we need to do some implementation, that time your step definition comes into the picture. Okay, that time your step definition, that means your all these steps are missing. All these steps are missing implementation. So if these steps are missing implementation, we need to add its implementation. So I am going to create a new package, and the package name is test step definition. Okay, I'm writing test step definition. I simply said finish here. I simply said finish here, and now I am going to add a step definition class here. So I am going to add a sample step definition, for example. Okay, step def class, for example. I said finish. So I have a simple Java class which should require a sample step def. I have the feature file which I wanted to execute, that is a sample feature. I have the runner class which will work on the JUnit runner. Okay, so now the answer is, it is saying we have missing this step def. So I simply copy this. I can go back here. I can paste it here. So if you can see, I have added all those missing steps within my sample step definition class, but every single annotation I am facing the error. So if I can mouse over on that error, it will say you need to import the given, that is from the Cucumber API. Okay, because we already added Cucumber API within this project, so it says you need to import this given. I said okay, let's import. So it imports given. Then all, if you can see my feature file, we'll go back in feature. It says given I have the valid username. It has the same definition, given I have the valid username. Now in second it says and is additional given, additional precondition. So there is no and annotation. So what it will preferably use, it is using a given along with this. It will not use and here, it is using that and is collaborating with which GWT concept. So it is providing with given. So that's why it takes by default given here. Again, next and it is taking the given here. So it added in this way. Now same for your when as well. Like in when, you need to import this when, which is available within your Cucumber library or API. So I click simply on this when, and same way that and becomes when here. Same way for then, I am going to import this then. Okay, and now what I do, I simply have this pending exception, so I can see I'm simply saying just keep it import as a pending exception. Now there is no error. I save this whole project. I say save all. There is no error. I go back in the sample feature in the test execution, and most of the time the execution and the error that people may do is they thought we have added the feature file, now we have added the definition file, we have added the test runner class, and we have added Cucumber option for that feature which already we have added. So now let's run this project. That's what they thought. Same way which we can do. So if I run this project without adding the reference of that particular your definition file, still the same error will come. So if I can click here, it says still your these definitions are missed. If you can see, here, let me show you. Still it says you have this 8 steps and you have the missing implementation for all those 8 steps, if you can see here. Okay, so the reason behind is because we need to add now the path of your step definition file also. So I said I want a glue. So glue is another features within this particular Cucumber options, which will help you and which will tell you the path of your step definition file. Always in glue we can just define the path of your step definition file. Same way in features, always we define the path of your feature file. Currently we have only one file, that's why I mentioned the folder, but you can give the specific feature file also in the features. We will see that day by day, not an issue. Okay, for this. Now for to add this glue, what I can do, I can simply add here again the package name. So what is the package name of that step definition? So we have test step definition. I guess we have this step test definition. So I can simply add here that package name, because previously we are added only feature file, we executed, but we are not giving the reference of the step definition file. That's why what happened, that's why it executes, and again it was saying that you are missing some of the step definition. Now we have given the step definition reference, and let's execute this project one more time. So if I can execute this, now this time it executes. It says we have executed 1 scenarios and 8 steps, but this time I am getting a pending exception. This time I am getting the pending exception. Why this pending exception? If we can go back to your sample step definition, you can find here we have added a throw new pending exceptions. We have added here a throw new pending exception. Okay, that's the reason we are getting this pending exception. So what we can do, we have this glue and we have this feature file. So let's go back to your step definition and replace this pending exception with simple sysout. So I can do simple sysout. We can add the Selenium code also. So I can do the simple sysout like enter valid username and a password. That is what the first. Same way, in the second step, I have added let's have a AUT, that is your application under test. Okay, when we say AUT, always you can mention this type of terms in the test automation so that others or the new person can understand what is AUT, that is application under test always. Okay, now the third one is, we can say open, we can say your open URL in browser. Okay, same way we can update your vein. In the vein we can say, let's say my action is enter username. This is my action. Same way I'll simply copy this. Same way I have next, that is enter my password. I have the next, that is click on sign in button. Okay, so I said click on sign in button. Same way, later my expected outcome is, in my expected outcome I said I should logged in. Here I said I should logged in, and then I can see in the next, I can say I can see home as a page title. Okay, so I can see the home as a page title. So what we did, we simply remove all this pending exception. We can remove this import also because that is not required now. No need to have any warning to any of your code base. So that's why I removed that. That should be a very good coding guidelines or standard that you followed if you do not have any of the uh, warning in your program. So I have removed that. I have just simply added the print statement within all this. Now let's try and execute this Cucumber class. So I simply right click, I said JUnit dot run. So this time when I executed, what it says, so if we can go back and see, so it executes all your steps. See now, it executes all your steps. The first steps, that is enter valid username and password. Same way, the second step, it say let's have a application under test. So it took that. In the third, it was opening that URL in a browser, that is application URL in the browser. Then it enters the username, then enters the password, then click on the sign in button, and then it validate the expected result, that is he should or she should be logged in or user should be logged in. And then they validate user can see home as a page title. This is how they worked, and they added all the play, or they just work around this play. So now what I did, I simply added these features and I simply added these actions. Now there are a different settings or the property, or we can say the Cucumber options are available. Like we added features, we have added the glue. So now let's execute another one, that is a dry run. Okay, so most of the time what dry run is, the dry run value is false most of the time. Okay, and we can make that as a true. The reason and the benefit of this are because it checks all the steps have the step definition or not. So I repeat one more time, the dry run feature or the dry run things or the property will check always if your sample each and every step from your scenario, that means every step from the scenario has the respective step definition into this step definition file or not. So they are checking it should have the step definition in the step definition file. If it is not there, then it will throw you the console exception, or it will throw you which is missing in your console. So always what people or the people or the architect says, so you can execute any of your JUnit runner class or any of your Cucumber class always with your dry run. Okay, so you can use always with your dry run. So now let's see, I am removing, let's see, I am removing this method. For example, I have removed one step from here. I simply save, and so default value is false for dry run. I have updated that to true. If we don't want to use dry run, then do not use here that feature or this setting, okay, or this property in the Cucumber option. If you use it, so it is used for only true. So if you wanted to use it for false, it never make any sense, because by default dry run is false here. Okay, now what I did, I remove one step from here, and now I try to execute this program or this feature file and the definition file using the JUnit test runner. So let's right click, run as, and your JUnit runner class. Okay, so I use right click, run as, and your JUnit. So now what we do, is we can simply see the output of this. Let's go back here and see what is the output. I'm going to my console and I check, see what it says. So dry run will identify it has the missing step which needs to implement within your step definition file. It says you have some of the missing steps that you need to implement within your step definition file. So if we can go back here, it is nothing but this method which we have deleted from there. Okay, so we have this method which is we have deleted from here. So let's go back. I can see, and I can copy this. I can go back to my sample step definition, and I can say this is my file. And now you can execute this program one more time and see what will be the output. Let's execute this test runner one more time, and it says you have executed that scenario. Okay, so it says there is no missing steps available in your step definition or in your feature files within your step definition file. So this is how we can add these features, glue and dry run. There are some more features which we can add out here, like if I wanted to execute any of the tag, okay, or if I can execute any of the application or into a very I mean in a better readable format. Let's say now I can remove this. I don't want to execute dry run, otherwise it will not execute my program. If you can see, the dry run will never execute. It will just check and tell you if any of the step is missing in your step definition, nothing else. But if you can go back here, and if you wanted to see or check this report, I can simply remove this, and then we see what is the output. I simply save, I run this program one more time, and we can see what is the output of this program. So it says enter the valid username and all, but these areas where we cannot understand what exactly this is, okay, because it is using a very I mean, this is just like the bytecode in your Java class file. So what we can use to maintain this in a very good form, so I can use another feature is a monochrome. Okay, I can use a monochrome. Now to use the monochrome, what I can do, I can simply write monochrome and I can say the value is equals true. So what monochrome will do, so monochrome will use and which says to, I mean, you can get the console output in very much a very good a readable way. So I can get the output in console but I cannot read, then they can provide you the readable format using the monochrome. We can use this monochrome in future to get this in our graphical report as well. Okay, so at this stage I simply use this monochrome and we can right click, we can run as and the JUnit test. Let's see how the output it prints. So if we can go see now the change in your output. Previously it was writing like one scenarios 8 steps, but what was written here it was not understandable. Now once you use the monochrome and you said 1 passed 8 passed is very good manner, so you can read these scenarios in a way. But if you can remove this, if you can remove this and rerun your program, then the output is something different. Let's execute. If you can see now this output is something different. Okay, so that's why always we can see the monochrome we can use, and that monochrome will help you into your the test execution most of the time. Now this is how we can see some of the properties from your Cucumber options. Okay, these are your mostly used properties. We do have another, like your tags. I can write here, we can use like a tags. Okay, and if you wanted to say which tags you wanted to run, so let's say I have here a multiple scenario. I said this scenario tag is my scenario. Okay, I said my scenario, that is the tag. I wanted to run this my scenario, so that what I'll do, I'll simply go back in my test runner and mention my scenario. So it will execute your tag that you mention over there in your Cucumber options. This is how we use the tags also. Okay, this is how we can use the tags also. Now, so what we saw today, we saw are important, that is Cucumber options. We can see the run with, we can see what is annotation, we can see what is features, we can see what is glue, we can see what is monochrome, we can see what is tags, we can see what is a dry run, and we saw how we added a feature file and we updated that feature file, and how we can just execute or added those step definition here. Okay, so we just added step definition, we just added the feature file here. So now in the we just run using test execution runner. So three different and three important classes and the dot feature file we saw here. Now in the next session I am going to explain more in detail along with this Selenium. So we can see this step execution along with the Selenium. Okay, so meanwhile you can just watch both the videos, and I would request, if you have any doubt or question, you can join me on LinkedIn, and you can search automated script on LinkedIn and you can join me on LinkedIn and you can ask the questions. And most of the time if you have the questions on today's session, you can just ask the question in the comment section of this current window. Okay, you will get this video on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to this channel, and mostly you will get the feedback in a couple of minutes. Okay, So that's it from my side today. So we will meet every alternate day on every new topic, guys. So we'll update and you will get the latest updates on our YouTube channel uh, every day and tomorrow morning for the next session. Thank you so much for joining. Have a good night.